Hello, my name is Simon Nielsen, and I've been a Magic Pro for the past 5 years. I have a World Magic Cup win in 2014, two GP trophies, and I'm a coach at the MTG Insider. So I'm here today with a short video to just grasp the surface of how to get better at Magic. And it's like a fairly big question. We're not gonna be able to get to all of the nuances of it in 15 minutes. But the most important thing is that you might feel yourself just maybe you have had some results or you feel like your game has grown, but you kind of feel stuck now, that you're plateauing and you're just like playing a bunch of games on the arena ladder, like trying to get to Mythic, or playing a bunch of leagues on Magic Online in your favorite format, and or like playing just at your local game store, playing Pro Tour qualify events, whatever level you're at, you feel like you're just like not getting anywhere. You feel stuck, and this is a very common occurrence for Magic players. I've definitely been there, like a few couple of times. So don't be afraid that is like very natural. But we also want to try and figure out like how do we actually break out of that plateau, and so this is especially what we're going to do here as coaches on the MTG Insider. And this is just a short introduction of tips to help you do this. It's very important to remember that everything that I can give you are just tools. You are the one who have to work yourself to get better, but you can use the guides, the guidances, and the tools that I give you here. So there are like three basic headlines here. First one is to partner up. So this is definitely the easiest way out, is to play with players that are better than yourself. Now, that comes from a bit of a privileged standpoint. That's definitely where I've got a lot of my success from, is that I've been fortunate enough to actually have that in my social ecosystem, that I could play against really great players. And you might not necessarily be as fortunate and have those resources. But it doesn't necessarily have to be, the best of the best that you have to play with. Even just partnering up with other people with a similar mindset that you can work together with really will help you leverage your Magic skills. And so maybe those are people that you meet at tournaments or at your local game store, or you could hit up people that you meet online if you have a good chat, a good banter going on Magic Online with the same opponent. Like maybe try and reach out and ask if there should be more of a collaboration between the two of you. But also, if you are in a community such as the MTG Insider Discord, you will actually have access to a bunch of people who, just like you, are interested in getting better at Magic. And so you can lean on that resource and use it to just like broaden your network and actually find people to work closely with. This is very important for a few different things that you get to do when you're more than one person. The most common one is that you just play games together instead of just being yourself in your room playing the games on ladder. If you have someone else with you, like a call over Discord or Skype or Zoom or something, like looking at your screen and making the decisions with you, you will just get a lot of information flow going. The other person might point out plays that you didn't even think of, or you might get to explain something to them that they maybe hadn't understood of the way a deck or a matchup works out. And as you explain that, you can get to realize, oh, I actually know more than I thought I did. Just being able to talk to another person just helps so much. Another thing you can do with other players is that you can just test matchups directly. So if you're playing on ladder, one of the really dangerous pitfalls of that is that you cannot verify how good your opponents are, how well tuned their deck lists are, if they're going to sideboard well, and you can easily get a very inflated view of both your own playability and your deck's position in the metagame. Like, I've had countless of tournaments thrown away because I've just been winning a lot on Arena or Magic Online with the deck that had absurd win rates. I just go into the tournament and just get absolutely smashed because my deck is very bad, but I just went like 14-1, so how could it be bad? Well, the thing is that win streaks can just happen, and especially since like you just can't verify the level of your opponents online, it can get really dangerous. And also, you just don't get to play the matchups that you most want to play if you are looking to play in tournaments. Like there are usually like just a handful of decks that you're very interested in trying to beat, and if you want to get really good practice against these decks, it's very important to seek out people who are adept at playing with those decks and just play that matchup over and over again. Not mindlessly, but play a bit, discuss with the person you're playing with. Again, very important that you have someone to discuss with. You will also be able to just talk about like different ways to sideboard and try out different approaches in a much more efficient manner than if you played on ladder and just had to hope to hit the matchup that you're trying out a certain sideboard card for. So these are all things that are very important for having a testing partner. And another thing is just discussing strategy in itself. You don't actually have to have gameplay involved in order to just go on a Discord forum and just mention, hey, I've been trying to board in Vivian against rogues out of Rule and Standard. Is that good or not? And people will say, yeah, I do that too. Or someone will say, no, actually, I find that it just gets raised by Hedron Crab. Or a Rune Crab in this case. And so just the exchange of ideas will definitely also help you just level up a bit. Now, the second headline here is to study. So obviously we can't always rely on having other people. You need schedules to line up, and you actually need to even have the social network. And it's kind of a nuisance to always have to be dependent on other people. But you can do a lot of things just by yourself to get better that isn't just playing endless games mindlessly, because that is the thing we absolutely want to avoid. And so studying is another way to spend your time that will progress you in a very meaningful way. Now, I know my friend and world champion Javier Dominguez has told me about his weekly routine where he sees Magic as his job. So he just has the office hours, like when he's playing from some point in the morning to some point in the afternoon each day of the week. But then every Wednesday he just sets aside, and that's his study day. That's a really inspiring and important concept that even the best players still set time aside to read articles or watch videos of other good players. You can't know everything. If you are looking into trying out Tron in Modern, well, you could really benefit from just trying to learn from just the vast mass of information that is already out there from content producers about strategy guides, sideboard guides, gameplay videos of certain decks. Especially reading articles from some of the best players, like Paulo Vitor Dama La Rosa is probably the best article writer we have out there. Sam Blake is another good one too. But there's both articles on free sites and on sites where you have to pay. And we even have one of our coaches here, Adam Yurchick, who writes for TCG Player, and you can find his weekly articles on infinite.tcgplayer.com, and those are free. So that's another site to kind of broaden your view. But reading and watching is just one thing. You also have to actually try and implement those things when you play. So it's very important to do the kind of switching between the two, and especially maybe there's a lot of information in a strategy, or maybe in this video in itself. And if you just try and focus on taking out two things of the article or the video that you thought were something you could learn from, something that would improve you, if you just focus on those two things and just try and have those in mind at all times, whether it is planning how you're going to spend your time with Magic, or whether it is how you're going to actually approach the match, depending on what the information is, just having just a bit these baby steps really goes a long way. And especially as we're actively thinking about some theory or just some new information that we didn't know before as we're playing, that will help us grow as we implement those new theories into our game. Another thing you can do to study Magic, and this is really recommended, is to watch feature matches of great players. So we definitely have all the MPL matches. They have these league weekends where there's just a ton of coverage of games, where every single MPL streamer streams their match against other really good players. And sometimes even with commentary, so you can hear the thought process, but most of them are without commentary, and even then, just watching and see how they play it out, it can be really important. The thing though is that you have to watch it not as a television show. Well, I mean, you can, for all of this, definitely you can also just play Magic and enjoy it for what it is. But if you want to spend the time to improve, you don't watch with popcorn. You watch lean forward, actively trying to figure out what the person is thinking as they play each of their cards. And one really huge trap you can fall into is that you watch a video and you're like, oh, this person plays so poorly. I would have done this different there, that different there. Especially if it's like a commentated video, it will often happen that the person plays worse than they would have normally done because it takes a bit of attention to both commentate as you're playing. So that is something to be aware of. But even then, try and ask yourself, not just, oh, that person made that, play poorly there. Try and ask yourself, wait, why did the person do this? Like, why did they, make this play that seems kind of bad? And you realize that maybe, oh, that's actually the right play because they're playing around something that you didn't think of. Especially dangerous in feature matches where you can see the hands of both players, as you might think that a person, just playing into the sweeper that the opponent has is very stupid. But if you think more about it, there's actually like the person playing into the sweeper just know that it is there. And that doesn't mean that they didn't think about it, but they might have made a calculated risk that it wasn't worth it to play around it for whatever reason. And so if you try and set yourself in the mindset of the player playing, it's especially good if you can't actually see the opponent's hand in these feature matches. You will, you kind of get into the minds of the great players and see if you can learn something from them. Oftentimes it's like people make something that's, just play a card that's completely off curve or do something that you wouldn't do ever. And then you realize, oh, they're actually thinking about this card that isn't in the opponent's hand, but could have been. And there's definitely some value to be gleaned from that, especially as you have to like contort your mind, trying to like grasp, what is it exactly that they were thinking of. There's also this like great thing where you can watch your own games. This is really recommended, and you can, especially if you play on Magic Online, this is very easy to do because there is a replay feature on Magic Online. If you don't know it, you go to your settings, game history, and you'll just see all your games and you can replay them. This is super important, especially as you learn a new deck, and you can go back and just critically watch everything you do and question your decision making. You can also do this on Arena if you would have to like either set up a recording device like OBS or something, like recording your screen as you go in to play your set of standard matches. And then instead of playing 10 matches, if you just play like 7 matches and then spend the time you would play the last 3 matches, if you just spent that on reviewing the past 7 matches, you will gain so much more than if you just play 3 extra matches. Because you will see and you actually think about, oh wait, hold on, I did not realize at this point that I could have done something different here, or that the way I sequence now lets my opponent do something that you hadn't thought of. There's all these different ways, and when you're in game, you don't necessarily have the time to like break it down and think about it. And you might not even, it might just not even occur to you because you're, kind of tunnel visioning. But if you get to see your own game again, the options open up again, and you can kind of like implement that in your next games. So I highly recommend watching your own games. This is also something that's great to do with a partner, that you review your games together, because that's a much faster way than if they have to watch you actually play your game. You can just have them review the games that you thought were hard, and you can talk together over the different decision points. Very good thing to do. There's something I still like don't do enough of, and it's also something that's really good if you have something like the MTG Insider where you have access to coaches, because you can post videos of your replays, and we can just watch those and give you feedback on the things that we see that are that are important to keep in mind. So definitely, like, this is the biggest takeaway I can give you for at least the study part of this. Like, go through your own games critically. Very important. So the third headline here is to challenge yourself. And so again, like when we're just playing leagues or when we're just playing ranked ladder, we can kind of like get into this lull of just like, doing things like kind of as, a workout where it's just like the same things over and over again. We're just mindlessly detaching as we're doing this thing. It becomes more of a task rather than actual learning. And so what you can do if you try and do things in new ways, and especially in ways that are, engaging to you because they are challenging, like this will also help you get out of this rut of like just feeling like you've plateaued your level. So there are a few different things. Like you can just try new decks. If you're primarily an aggro player, maybe picking up Esper Doom, even if you think it's worse than your aggro decks, just playing some games with it will give you a completely new perspective on the format. And yes, you will lose a lot more, and maybe also because the deck is worse, but also because it's new to you. So there's the challenge in trying to learn that. There's also a different thing of if you play with other decks of the format, you'll get to see things from their side, which will help you when you're playing your Gruul aggro deck and you're playing against Espadum to make your decisions more clearly or be able to read your opponent better. Because you will know, oh wait, if they play this card on turn 4, that means that it wouldn't have this other card. Because I know that when I played Espadum, I would always play the Shadow Disguise before I played my Doom Foretold or something like that. And you can learn that there's actually a lot of value in just playing things from the other side, because if you get to see things from the other side, it gets much easier to put yourself in the opponent's shoes, and putting yourself in the opponent's shoes is a very important step for leveling up, as you have to try and think, what would my opponent do next turn, or what's my opponent thinking of. It will also help you learn, like, if there are certain sideboard cards that you play as Espadum and you realize, oh, this card, I'm actually kind of happy that they play, this, that my opponent plays Great Henge, because you have like so many answers to it. And you don't necessarily see that from the Gruul side, where you just, I just want to draw a bunch of cards, so I put the Great Henge in my deck. And that's where you can actually get like a lot of value. And another thing, you can also just try out new formats. Like on Arena, it's kind of limited. You can do like standard or historic, or you can do limited. Like definitely, like jumping into limited will completely like open up at this whole new spectrum of different ways to think about the game. And conversely, if you are playing limited and you want to jump to constructed, this has been mostly focused on constructed, but you can definitely also play limited. There's also, now that I think about it, on the study aspect and the replays, I just realized that there is this website called 17lands.com, which is specific for playing limited on Arena. And not only do they track your draft logs, so you can review your drafts and track, like your preference for cards and your decks and such. You can always like review all this info. But they're also launching, and they're still rolling it out, so it might not be ready yet. The ability to watch your own, like to rewatch your games of Arena, because the program just tracks your games. So it doesn't work for constructed, but it does work for limited. And everything I say here definitely also applies to limited. Not like this testing specific matchups or something, but the testing with your partner or watching replays and such, like reading strategy, like all of this definitely also applies to limited. But yeah, like trying out a new format, especially like as you jump to Magic Online, or if you're on Magic Online and you try Vintage for the first time, like now it's like a completely new like cornucopia of just information and things you have to learn, and these are just ways that will engage your brain and try and get you to think about Magic. And maybe playing Vintage won't make you better at limited, but at least if you're just like mindlessly drafting, like, draft after draft, and you don't feel like you're learning anything, you just go 2-1 every time and there's no satisfaction there. Like just trying something new will just make your brain just engage with Magic better, and then when you return to limited, maybe you actually will find that you've had like a new perspective. And then like the last bit of tip here is to enter tournaments. That is like the biggest challenge you can give yourself. Unfortunately, we still don't have live tournaments right now, but hopefully they'll come. And but even just online, there are plenty of tournaments. You can go to mtgmelee.com, where there's just a bunch of tournaments happening, especially like the Star City Games one, SCG Tour online tournaments that are happening on most weekends. If you can play in the Arena Opens or the Arena Qualifiers, and if you're on Magic Online, there are the format challenges every weekend, and even just the prelims during the weekdays. There's actually a lot of competitive Magic happening on Magic Online that you don't get at the same rates on Arena. And just playing a tournament, it's just a completely different experience from playing on ladder and trying to get to top Mythic. Because as you're playing on ladder, and even as you're playing in Mythic, like you just can't, as I said, you can't verify that your people are good or that they're even doing their best if you're just like trying something out for fun. But if you're playing at a tournament, and especially the more high stakes it is, your opponents will get better. They will try harder to beat you, and it is definitely like the best test you can do for a new deck or new brew. If you try and take it into a tournament, it's a much rougher field, and you'll learn so much more about what you can. And also, because there is something at stake, you will be more engaged, and you will like try and play better, and you will learn more from that. And there's also the thing about tournaments is that once the stakes get really high, once you get close to like trying to make a top 8 or something, or about to win a qualification for a Pro Tour or a set championship, you might choke a bit because the pressure is too much, and these things are just something you can't really get around except for experience. You just have to like try as many times as possible. So that's another thing that I just can't like recommend wholeheartedly enough. It's just like play as many tournaments as possible. This will really help you grow your game. As long as you are like playing them engaged and not just being like, oh, well, if you go into it with the same enthusiasm as you go on ladder and you just go O2 drop and like, you kind of forget about it, then they won't provide you with the value you seek. But if you actually engage in the tournament and really take it seriously, that will also be rewarding to you and will help you grow out of the rut. So those are the three things here. Definitely find other people to work with. Do some studying on your own whenever you don't have a partner around, and also just challenge yourself, like playing tournaments, try out new things, do things in new ways will definitely help you improve. I definitely recommend going to mtginsider.com if you don't already know about us, and look up this option, because being able to get feedback from coaches is yet another way that you can improve your game and actively think about what you're doing wrong that you might not see yourself. I also included the links from some of the other websites I mentioned. Until then, have fun with Magic and keep growing.